Audio made possible by www.jackettome.com. Warning. The following has suggestive content that is not suitable for some listeners. Audio Fanfiction Productions presents Wide Awake. Fanfiction written by Angskata003. Fanfiction inspired by the Twilight Saga written by Stephanie Meyer. Chapter 33. Macadamia Unicorns. Bella's point of view. When I got home, I flopped lifelessly onto the stool in the kitchen, folding my arms on the cold granite countertop, and laying my cheek on my forearms. I sighed. Still grinning. Holy freaking cow. I allowed the whole day to replay in my head in perfect clarity. When he first told me he would try, I was so excited and hopeful. I tried to bite back all the frustration at the fact he had to use a whole technique just to do it. He guided me to his lap, which kind of confused me because I was hoping for some kissing or something, and the position would have made it very awkward. Instead there were relaxing caresses on my arms and shoulders. The kind where his fingertips left a trail of warmth and tingles up my skin. The first time he touched me and I felt the panic welling in my chest, I said the safe word. And I was pissed off. Part of me had convinced myself that I was just having a bad day last week when he did it, and it wouldn't always be like that. He gave me a look that clearly said, no frustration allowed. Thankfully, he kept going, touching and relaxing until he could finally grope me like every 17-year-old boyfriend should. I wanted to know if he liked it, if I felt good to him. I wasn't necessarily voluptuous or anything. I was hoping my small pickup size wasn't disappointing. But he nodded in agreement with me. His agreement made me want more. Made me want to show him more, and definitely made me want to feel more. And when he was finally able to hold my breast in his hands with nothing in between us, I was basically melting. I felt him go hard beneath me, and it just made me melt more. So I wanted him to go further, because I was afraid I wouldn't have another chance to. I stayed so still in his arms, terrified that, if I moved it would ruin his method. It was easier when he touched me lower. I didn't understand why, because it was so much more personal of a space to me, but he was able to really touch me, and rub me, and rub me, and rub me. I was already in desperate need of a change of panties, when he hit the most sensitive spot. And I was lost, needing to feel even more of it, and having no idea why I was reacting so desperately to it. Then he began granting my unspoken requests, and rubbing it completely, and growing even harder beneath me with my moans. I knew he was aroused and still withholding the feeling of any pleasure. And it frustrated me to no end. I began whimpering and silently pleading with him to just let go and feel it with me, but he didn't. So I pulled his hair because I knew that would arouse him further. It worked for a moment as he kissed my neck and raised his hips into me, but he stopped himself yet again. It really wasn't fair. I was making the most ridiculously embarrassing noises, just rocking against his palm shamelessly while he remained composed. It wasn't us, so I dug deep down into my confidence and pulled out just enough to touch him. The look on his face as I pressed my hand into his crotch beneath me was really quite priceless. I just sent him a rather pointed glance. "Show me yours." And he did. He let me touch him in a way I had never touched anyone before. I was so clueless as to what he would like, so I just copied his movements with my palm. And eventually we were working in sync together, moaning and groaning and panting relentlessly as I rocked against his palm. The noises he was making while he licked my neck made me melt even further as I grasped him tightly in my hand. I made sure to rub him just as fast and hard as he was rubbing me. It was doing the strangest things to my body, making me desperate for more, and wishing I wasn't wearing as many clothes while he was doing it. Something deep inside of me was building. His groans became breathless grunts into my neck as I stroked him in my hand roughly beneath me, making him copy my movements. At the time, I had no idea what was happening. But it felt really, really good. So I let my body and instincts take over. the ones that made me enjoy his touch instead of cower away from it. Somewhere deep inside the recesses of my mind, I was feeling utterly ridiculous for reacting so desperately. Embarrassing the crap out of myself as I writhed against him shamelessly, filling the meadow with sounds that were probably quite similar to that of mortally wounded cattle. I didn't realize until it occurred what was actually happening to me. My whole body stiffened as something inside of me exploded, making me shudder, and then suddenly I was floating. The only thing I could think of was Edward, and much to my extreme mortification, I think I probably even said it aloud. I, Isabella Crazy Untouchable Virgin Swan, was having an orgasm. Though I had never really even considered the possibility of ever experiencing one, I had no idea what it could feel like. I had heard it talked about so many times. This orgasm thing. Alice praised it like it was a religion. I heard girls talking about it in the locker room like it was the most normal and natural thing to ever experience. Over the past months, I began hearing them develop a rating scale for the things. I got the feeling most of them were embellishing the frequency in which they experienced it quite a lot. I was pretty sure I had never even come close to having anything like they described. I also saw movies and shows where women discussed them as if they were some ephemeral narcotic substance, seeking it out desperately, doing all the busy work, and rarely ever being graced with its presence. It was the topic of many discussions, and every person, man and woman, always held it in the highest regard. Me. I mentally manifested the entire concept of the female orgasm into a unicorn. Yes. A unicorn. A very pretty, white, majestic, non-existent mythical creature that everyone talks about, but you never actually see firsthand. That is, unless that hand belongs to a certain Edward Cullen. It was like nothing I had ever felt before. Well, technically it was nothing I had ever felt before. I wondered if Edward even realized he granted me two pretty white unicorns. The first time was great beyond all comparison. But then, just as I was coming down, I felt him shudder lightly beneath me and groan huskily into my neck, while I had my hand wrapped as far around him as I could through his jeans. Then I felt it twitching in my palm, while he continued rubbing me shakily and gasping against my skin. And the realization that I was giving Edward a unicorn of his very own made me fall over the edge once more. And God freaking bless unicorns. I made him unravel, like that. Not Jessica Stanley or Laura Mallory, but me. After we were fully recovered and I turned to look at him, he had his eyes closed. But the expression on his face made me glow. He had delight sheen of sweat on his forehead, matting down a few stray bronze hairs to his skin. And he looked peaceful, relaxed in a way that suggested much satisfaction. It made me smile widely when he finally lifted his heavy eyelids, exposing his shining green eyes. Then he grinned lazily at me, and it reminded me of what I dreamt the smile would be like on his face after I pleasured him. And there it was. The sight of it made my heart swell with hope. My fantasy future with Edward, however ridiculously presumptuous and unattainable it may be, wasn't necessarily impossible. Just ask our pretty white unicorns. I had, quite possibly, the goofiest grin on my face all evening. Alice kept eyeing me suspiciously, since she knew I had spent the day with Edward. And every time I would look away blushing, afraid that my goofy grin would give me away. It's not like I had anything to be ashamed of. We were in love, and still fully clothed. Sadly, I wanted to make him his favorite dinner. Or maybe buy him a new car. I couldn't decide which was more appropriate. Since I was sorely lacking where automobile funds were concerned, I made the Alfredo. It just seemed like I should do something special for him. After all, he only had one. At 9, I made a new recipe. Macadamia unicorns. I didn't actually have a unicorn-shaped cookie cutter, but I added it to my shopping list, in hopes that I would need it again. Sooner rather than later. Alice was out with Jasper late, so I locked my bedroom door, like I had been doing ever since the gym incident. It made me far more comfortable when I was at Edward's and I didn't have to spend my time with him worried about someone walking